thing about diets is that there's always an expiration date. Dieting doesn't actually teach us how to eat. It doesn't actually teach us how to make lifestyle changes. It just tells us that all we have to do is remove this or restrict that up until this point, and then there should be an outcome. Diets basically teach us that there's this endpoint, there's this expiration date, and we just have to reach it. And once we reach it, we stop working. And so the anti-diet approach is really reframing the question, reframing the goal even. So instead of, for example, my goal is to release 30 pounds, when we reframe that, we say, my goal is to become the person who's 30 pounds light. Welcome back, friends. I'm your host, Sherry Shaban, and with each episode, I am honored to be your coach and guide in the journey to make peace with food, fall in love with fitness, and ultimately yourself. My intention in each episode is to help you release the old story of who you are and step into the one you're always meant to be. We'll challenge conventional diet and fitness culture and understand the importance of tuning out all the shoulds they tell us to do and tuning into our own inner wisdom instead. What you focus on, you create more of. Through these conversations, you'll shift your focus from what you're supposed to be doing to who you want to be, so that health and fitness and ease around food is not just what you do, but who you are. And if you find that this conversation resonates with you today, then I want to invite you to join our free Make Peace with Food Facebook community at myfoodfreedomlifestyle.com, where you can connect with me and my team directly and access all the free trainings and resources we have for you so you can regulate your nervous system and make peace with food. And then also remember to share this episode with someone who you think needs to hear this today. The links are in the show notes. If you're listening to today's episode and you feel like food and dieting and weight and body image has completely taken over your life, has complete power over you, I hope this conversation brings you the comfort and inspiration that you're searching for. And remember, you're not alone. Healing is possible. If you've ever felt like you know exactly what to do, but you just can't bring yourself to do the things that you know to do, then I want to invite you to join me during my 3-day Break the Cycle Masterclass, where I'm going to be talking about how to overcome binge eating and emotional eating and how to regulate your nervous system so that you're no longer engaging in these unwanted eating behaviors. And this isn't a 3-day masterclass on weight loss, by the way. This is a 3-day masterclass on understanding how to break free from the cycle that's resulting in the side effect of weight gain. And that's the big difference, because you know this by now, that repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is called insanity. You know that dieting doesn't work. You know that it's not about hard discipline and getting yourself to be on another plan or hiring a nutritionist to tell you what to eat. You know all the things. Heck, I bet you can even write a book on all the things. But what you do want to uncover is, why is it that you continue to sabotage? Why does it feel like you're always on the wagon or off the wagon? And that's exactly why I'd love for you to join me during this 3-day Break the Cycle Masterclass that I'm giving completely free. Now you can register at sherryshaban.com/break the cycle. Again, sherryshaban.com/break the cycle. Again, it's completely free to join. And the goal during these 3 days together is to uncover why it is that you continue to engage in unwanted eating behaviors, even though you know exactly what to do. sherryshaban.com/break the cycle. All right, now let's get into it. The thing about diets is that there's always an expiration date. Right? Most diets, when we start dieting or we start whatever new regime that we're trying, we always know that we just have to do it up until a certain point, right? And if you notice,
I never looked at it that way, but that's good. I like that expiration date part.
Yeah. And then the other thing we have to ask ourselves is, why is it that here in North America, United States and Canada, we are some of the wealthiest countries in the world. We have so much science. We know so much about nutrition. We have the most quote unquote health foods and diets available. And yet, why are we the most overweight populations on the planet? Why is it that we are suffering from all of these weight related diseases? And so it's really because of the mindset of dieting. And dieting doesn't actually teach us how to eat. It doesn't actually teach us how to make lifestyle changes. It just tells us that all we have to do is remove this or restrict that up until this point, and then there should be an outcome. And we're never really given any explanation or guidance around what to do afterwards. And here's how the human mind works. The human mind always likes to know when it's going to stop doing something, right? If I tell you, okay, Rich, start running. And you're gonna be like, okay, Sherry, for how long? I'm like, Rich, just keep running, right? Your mind is gonna force you to slow down. You're not gonna have a lot of energy to run because you don't know how long you're supposed to run for. But if I tell you, you're gonna run for 10 minutes or you're gonna run for 2 miles, well, you already have that end point in sight, and then you're able to manage your energy towards that. And the same thing with, let's say, when we do our taxes every year, we collect all of our stuff, we give it to the accountant, and then we stop working. We never have to think about it until the next year. And so diets basically teach us that there's this end point, there's this expiration date, and we just have to reach it. And once we reach it, we stop working. And so the anti-diet approach is really reframing the question, reframing the goal even. So instead of, for example, my goal is to release 30 pounds, when we reframe that, we say, my goal is to become the person who's 30 pounds lighter. And now that's a really, really big shift, because if I want to lose 30 pounds, I mean, there's so many ways to do that. I can go keto, I can go on Weight Watchers, I can restrict, I can over exercise, I can even chop off an arm and I'll release 30 pounds, right? However,
please don't chop off the arm.
Please don't do that, but we could, right? And it doesn't really say anything to us. If I want to release weight, I could also be releasing muscle mass. I could be releasing that precious tissue. It's just what the scale says. But if my goal instead is to become the person who's 30 pounds lighter, well, now I'm going to look at my entire lifestyle. What time am I going to wake up? What's the first thing I'm going to do when I get up? What's the first thing I'm going to consume? What time am I going to consume that? Am I going to exercise? Well, what kind of exercise is that going to be? And now I can start looking at purposeful exercise and then non-purposeful exercise. And then what am I going to have for lunch? And then what time do I stop eating at night? And what are the choices I'm going to make? And who are the people I'm going to spend time with? And now you can really start to make a bigger picture around who this avatar is, and then slowly start to add one habit at a time. And this is what I call habit stacking. And so oftentimes, many of us who have not been in this space, or we don't know who that person who's 30 pounds lighter is going to be. We don't know what that lifestyle is going to look like. So if we're in that place where we're confused and we just don't know where to begin, one thing we can do is connect with somebody that we know who is doing the things that we want to do, who is getting the results that we want. So same thing around finances. If somebody's getting the results that you want, what do? You go and ask them, well, how do you manage your budget? Where do you do your investments, and so on and so forth? And the same thing stands for your health and fitness journey. And so when we remove ourselves from this word diet, the other thing that we do is we shift from a can't mindset to a don't mindset. And so when we diet because we're restricting and we can't eat this many calories today, and we can't have sugar because we're dieting, and we can't eat carbs, and we can't, what we're also telling ourselves is that there's desire behind that. We want that thing, but we're not allowing ourselves to have that. And this creates a dopamine reward system in the brain where we desire that thing even more. So if I can't have a donut because I'm on a diet this week, because I got to lose 10 pounds by, August 15th, then what I'm actually saying is I desire it. I'm restricting myself, and I'm going to want that donut even more. So by the time I let myself have that donut, it's not going to be one donut. It's probably going to be 5, right? However, if we're able to get to that place where we say, I don't eat donuts, I don't eat processed foods, I don't eat fast food, right? Then it becomes an absolute description around who we are. So for example, heroin, and I always give this example. If I go to a party and somebody offers me heroin, I'm not going to say, oh no, I can't do it, right? I'm going to say, no, I don't do it, because I don't do heroin, right? So when we can shift from can't to don't, that's where now we're also getting into that place where we are restructuring and remodeling ourselves to become that person who it is that we desire to become.
Ooh. Damn, you're good at this. Well, before we started recording, I told you I had a doctor put me on a diet.
Right.
And we just did Christmas in July. For those of you listening, this is being recorded July 31st. So we just did Christmas in July at my sister's last weekend. And I'm sitting there counting my calories and everything. And then I'm looking at all the brownies and the cheesecake squares. And it's like, oh God, I want that so bad. But I know and I'm just sitting there thinking how I can't because it's going to do this. If I would have said I don't like that, that would have changed my mindset completely. 100%. Because the other thing is too, I love to drink beer. I love beer. Since I started this diet, I said no, because beer's got a lot of calories, and the old saying, he's got a beer gut. But I was drinking I didn't even go to the I call it flavored water, the low cal beer. But I said, you know what? No, I don't. And this has helped me. I said, I don't want beer. I want water. But if I would have done that with the damn cupcakes and brownies and those little cheese squares, that would have been different. I love the way you said that. That's a good point, because one of the things we always, or at least we taught our kids when they were younger, kids always want, or they got to have this. And we taught them, no, ask for what you need.
Yes.
Which kind of backfired with my son, because he said, well, I want to have to need that. But no, I love that. And with the heroin analogy, I really thank you. See, God, I've already learned so much already. This is amazing. And I want your take on this. Sleep. And I believe, you should try, especially as you get older. I would say 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night. But what about naps during the day? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's interesting, because most of the time when we do feel tired in the middle of the afternoon, there could be different reasons for that. So one could be a sugar crash, for example, right? So before we allow ourselves to have the nap and make that a part of our routine, let's get curious around why. And one of the reasons, again, could be that we have a sugar crash. And this could be just an intense drop in insulin. And that's happening in the middle of the afternoon. The other thing could be that during the night, we aren't actually getting restful sleep and we need that nap. So let's say we've unpacked this and we realize that, yes, my Oura Ring or whatever sleep tracking device I have is showing me that I'm getting enough REM sleep and I'm getting restful sleep. And I also eat moderate amounts of sugars and I don't have these sugar crashes. Then why don't we give ourselves permission to take a nap? Because normally what we actually think about doing is either eating something or having something caffeinated to keep us alert and awake. And so there is a lot of merit in just listening to the body, like we were talking about earlier, and really allowing yourself to get that rest. And sometimes it's 20 minutes or a 30-minute nap that can really restore your energy, especially if you're going through a stressful time or you're noticing that you're overexerting your body. But the first thing I would say is really just notice how you're managing sugar, how you're managing certain things in your diet that are maybe peaking and spiking your energy or sugar levels. And then you're noticing you're crashing often. And then also just to make sure that you are getting restful sleep during the night.
Just curious too with you, because you got into fitness shortly after your accident, right? So I got, 17, 18?
I was 20. I was about to turn 21. Yeah.
Okay. Did you try all these different diets as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is an interesting part of my story. I think you were going to ask another question though. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was going to ask you about that. If you tried all these different diets and your take on them all.
Yeah.
Well, I knew your take on them all, but let everybody listening know about them.
Yeah. So when I first got into the fitness space, like I was sharing, Rich, it was really to overcome major back pain. And I got so inspired when I was able to do that and be able to run again when, doctors were telling me that was never going to happen. And so I wanted to get into that place where I could also help people overcome their obstacles, whether that was an injury like mine, whether that was a disease or a condition, or maybe even a struggle with weight. And so one of the things that I committed to doing was learning everything I could about nutrition. And when I first got into this space, everybody was talking about counting calories and how you should have a low calorie diet. And again, my objective was not to release weight. I didn't even need to at that point, but I
Right.
needed to learn how to eat so that I can help others too. And so I started the low calorie diet and I started tracking every single calorie. And then after that, I heard that fats were bad. And so then I was like, okay, well, let me go low fat. It's going to be 0% fat, everything. And then I jumped on that. And then all of a sudden, this dude named Atkins was saying, you should eat a lot of meat, and now you should eat a lot of fats, and then carbohydrates are bad, even tomatoes. So I was like, okay, there's science there. Remember, I'm a science nerd. So, yep, we're
Right.
going to do that. Then I opened the CrossFit gym, and then everybody was saying that you should eat like a caveman, and now we should be paleo. So I'm like, right, we're going to eat paleo. Then after that, everybody was talking about the zone diet. So then I did the zone diet, which is a lot like macros and counting your points and all these things. And then after that, everybody was talking about ketogenic diet. So then boom, that looks a lot like Atkins again, except a little bit less meat. So then I did the ketogenic diet. Then I even became vegan. And so during this whole process, what actually ended up happening was I developed a very disordered relationship with food. I actually feared food. I had a lot of anxiety around food because my rules kept changing every single week practically. And I was helping people with nutrition. I was creating meal plans and I was teaching this stuff. And yet there was a lot of, we don't eat this. This is bad. We eat this. This is good. There's science here. There's science there. There's science everywhere. And what I started noticing I was doing is I was restricting, like I was sharing earlier. And then the moment that it was Friday night and I could have my cheat meal, well, my cheat meal became an entire binge session. And I would purchase all kinds of desserts, all the things that we were saying were bad and we don't eat all week. I was driving to another grocery store where my members wouldn't see me and I'd be getting all that stuff and then eating secretly at home. And then by Monday, I'd clean everything back up. I would meal prep, do a couple of days of fasting to make up for what I just did. And it was this vicious cycle that I was trapped in. And again, so grateful. Life happens for you, right? My accident, my injury happened so that I can help people and really understand what it feels like to suffer and be in pain. And the same thing here. Most people who diet also develop a disordered relationship with food. Most people are extremely confused about food, and they also get their information from the wrong sources. And the sources such as, for example, medical doctors, because where we put them in the hierarchy in our society, we put them pretty much up here. And I say this with so much respect because both my parents are physicians, my brother is a physician, but it is not their job to actually advise us about nutrition. They don't actually learn or study nutrition, and they are doctors of medicine. And so when we get that advice that we should restrict calories or count calories or eat low fat. I mean, I've even worked with people whose doctors put them on the cookie diet because they thought that that was the right way to lose weight. And so when we do that, we have to understand that the body doesn't actually count calories. The body counts nutrients. It doesn't care how many calories come in and come out. And in fact, the way that we measure calories is through combusting a food in a tight chamber and then measuring the energy or the kilojoules that comes off of it. And that's not how the body works. That's not how we digest. And so we cannot actually use calories to overcome inflammation. Inflammation in the body comes from the types of foods we eat, how we eat, and the fact that we don't actually take care of our cortisol levels and we don't allow our body a chance to heal. And so no amount of calorie counting or balancing can actually make up for that. And so once we learn the way that the body works, and it's not through a currency of calorie exchange, this big lie that we've been sold, which is you have to make sure that your calories in is less than your calories in and all this stuff. And or if you want to lose weight or gain weight, all this calories in, calories out stuff is not actually how we transform our body or release weight. And so I have tried all those diets. And again, for some people, maybe the carnivore diet might work a little bit more. For some other people, maybe a vegan diet might work. We all come from different areas and really genetic distributions that have favored certain types of foods. If you think about how, for example, some people on the planet eat that have an abundance in meat and others who have an abundance in plants eat, we can't say that we were all designed to eat the exact same way, but I think we can all agree that the majority of the food that we consume today is not really food. It's more food-like substance. A lot of the food we consume right now, processed food, that's man-made foods. that's what's creating a lot of the disease. And now throw in diets and confusion and then triggering the nervous system to binge eat and emotionally eat. Now we've got a mixture for really a lot of suffering and a lot of frustration long term.
Wow. So going through all these diets that you've been through, even though you've remained physically fit, how did it affect your health internally and even mentally?
Yeah. Well, mentally, I think that one was definitely the most challenging, because I remember there was this moment where I wanted to stop and I realized I couldn't.
Uh-huh.
Right? I realized like I really can't stop. And so it wasn't until I stopped restricting and I just allowed myself to be more relaxed and I really relearned to be neutral around all foods that I was actually able to overcome that. But the other thing that happened physically for me is that I developed a lot of gut health issues, because when you change your diet so drastically, you have to remember that the majority of the digestion that happens in your gut is not really from the human body. It's from the microbes that are living there, the microorganisms, or the gut microbiome, as they call it, that's responsible for breaking down foods. And so when I was paleo for so many years, I hadn't eaten any grains. I hadn't had any grains. I hadn't had potatoes. There were a lot of foods that I hadn't consumed. And then all of a sudden when I became vegan, well, now I took out meat and now I am bringing in legumes and beans and all kinds of things with a vengeance, because I'm trying to make sure my protein levels are high, and I was training a lot. And so just overnight, having to force my digestive system to digest something that it hadn't digested in years, that started to create a lot of issues. And then at that time too, my mom was incredibly sick. She passed away. And that also was a big psychological strain. And just, again, understanding just how much the nervous system actually is responsible for digestion, is responsible for fat storage or fat release, is a really, really big part of the equation. And so I ended up suffering with gut health issues for a couple of years, and then slowly had to do a lot of things, from supplements to gut health testing to really calming my nervous system down to be able to heal my gut and all the inflammation that I was having in my body. And, where I felt it also in my body was my back. So whenever we have inflammation in the body, we tend to feel chronic pain. Those places in our body that are the most vulnerable, that have deterioration, that's where we tend to actually see those flare-ups. And so my back was also out of control during that time when I was really trying to overcome gut health issues.
Wow, man. It's most people would have given up, but you just stuck with it. And now you're teaching others how to do it properly. And I have to ask you this, because I just love the website, the way it's spelled out. Make peace with food, commune, eat. Yeah. I just love a play on words. Explain to everybody what the make peace with food community. Okay, that's hard to say. Community. Explain to everybody what that is. Wow.
Yeah.
Community. Which I'm going to.
That's good, Rich. You got it. So make peace with food. Again, born out of love, born out of my own struggles, born out of also just seeing in the last 25 years working with so many women that it's really not about the food, and their struggle with weight is actually a struggle with eating behavior. It's binge eating, it's emotional eating, it is compulsive overeating, and most often what's behind that is a need to cope for something that feels uncomfortable or feels unbearable. And so this is actually a nervous system issue involvement, and it's working on the part of the nervous system, which I call protection mode. And we also know it as fight or flight or sympathetic nervous state. But many women who've gone through traumas in their past, whether that is emotional or sexual or physical, or even food scarcity. Food scarcity is actually a traumatic event, and food scarcity could be real, which is really going to bed hungry many times because I had a single mom and she couldn't put food on the table. And that was a very big form of trauma. And another type of food scarcity is what I call imposed food scarcity. And that is dieting. That is us actually imposing that scarcity on ourselves. And anytime we have those type of traumatic experiences, we can lock ourselves in protection mode if it's been going on for so long, and then the body starts to adapt to it. And the behavior that we tend to see is the result of a coping mechanism, such as emotional eating or binge eating, but also we see other behaviors that we also tend to relate to a need to escape, such as drinking or using cannabis or even overspending. All of that is just a different vehicle for the same thing,
right.
which is really to try to escape something that is dysregulated. And so the community is an opportunity for women to join like-minded people where we actually help them overcome unwanted eating behavior and other self-sabotaging behavior. We heal their relationship with food, and more importantly, we heal their traumas. And I say we, but really we just hold space and we provide the tools, and it really is the women that are doing this. And we have a course that they follow where they're learning all these techniques and tools and really just reconnecting back to their body, because the body has this innate ability to let us know when we're hungry, when we're full, when we've had enough, and it even tells us what it is that it wants. But we've steered so far away from that when we've dieted so much, or we've relied on tracking devices or counting calories or points or any of these things to give us that external feedback. And so it's a healing environment. And ultimately the goal is that by overcoming unwanted eating behavior through shifting the nervous system, the body just naturally releases weight. It naturally starts to recover and restore, because if you're not binge eating, then you're not overeating. And if you're not overeating, then you're not struggling with weight.
And this is for women.
This is for women right now.
No, I can't join.
We actually have, it's funny that you say, we actually do have a couple of men in the program for the exact same reason. Okay. This is women's only. All right.
Yeah. One of the things I love to ask people, especially in your field, and if you can't share any, I understand, but if so, could you share a feel-good story with somebody that you have coached and has gone through, well, God, because you offer a lot more than just this. You offer a lot, but I guess when what do you call them? Clients?
Athletes.
Family? Huh?
I usually call them athletes.
Okay. All right. Can you share a feel-good story of one of the athletes that you've helped?
Yeah. So many came to mind, but I think I have to share this one. This is when I had my CrossFit gym, actually. And I had a lady that she first came to see me for private coaching, and she signed up for 40 sessions. And then we worked together in the summer. And then after that, she's like, okay, Sherry, all good, and I was kind of relieved, because to be honest, she was kind of hard to work with. I remember I would give her an exercise and there'd be a lot of resistance, or I would encourage her to do something. And then, she was always getting upset with me for trying to push her. But then sure enough, she comes back after a few months, and then she says to me, you know what, I'm ready to do this again. And this time I am committing for the full year, and I want to sign up for the entire year. So I was like, oh, okay. All right, Sherry, you can do this. And so we started working together. And again, I was still met with that same resistance. I would ask her to jump on a box, and she's like, I can't jump on a box. Why are you making me do this? And it was getting to the point where I was really, really about to just have that conversation with her, which was that really, really hard conversation, which I don't think we're a match. Like, I don't think this is going to work. But then she says to me, you know what, Sherry, when I was in high school, I was voted most unathletic. And they put a picture of me in the yearbook, and I was known to be the most unathletic person. And I am unathletic. And so every time you call me an athlete, I just don't believe it, because that's just how everyone's always seen me, and nobody's ever believed in me. And it's just how I've always walked around feeling and thinking. And it was at that moment that I realized just how powerful identity is. And the fact that she was holding on to this identity of being unathletic, that she was, her photo is in the yearbook. She even sent me a photo of this yearbook picture of her with that title. But because we are so attached to titles, because we are so attached to the way other people describe us, or even the way that we describe ourselves, that actually becomes our greatest limitations. And the moment that we know how to rewrite our identity is really how we set ourselves free. And so after that moment, I realized now the approach that I had to take with her. And the approach that I had to take with her was more through affirmations and really rewiring her thoughts and rewiring her brain, and more importantly, her self-concept, who she thought she was. And so I started to give her exercises around affirmations. And then all of a sudden, she started jumping on that box. All of a sudden, she was doing her jumping pull-ups. And that's when really all of a sudden her progress just started to explode and she started to see results. And so it's something I tend to see as a pattern for many of us, especially when we're starting our health and fitness journey. When we believe that we can't, when we believe it's going to be hard, when we believe it's never going to work for us, or other people have told us, you're always going to be overweight, it's never going to work for you, you'll never be able to do it. And we actually believe that, that's what blocks us. It's not all the things that we're doing. It's not the fact that we really can't. It's just we create that block simply by putting up that wall and deciding that it is impossible.
Have you ever had any people that you've worked with where you're trying to, I don't want to say, well, it is fixing their mindset, and no matter what you did, they just couldn't?
Yeah, that happens sometimes. And, I think there's this space when we're ready. And anytime I've ever seen that or I've ever experienced that, it really was because the person wasn't ready. And sometimes we have to push ourselves to that point of pain, that no tolerance limit. And we continue to get what we tolerate. So the more that whatever we're experiencing, as painful as it is still tolerable to us, then it's really, really hard to have that leverage for change. And so what I've actually noticed with those people is that, they'll, maybe they'll end up stopping for a bit, but then they'll always come back. And when they do come back, that's when they're really ready. And it's really just a matter of just getting to that line in the sand moment where that's it. Something's got to change.
Right. I was going to say, because I know a lot of people, the first time that would happen, I would think that you felt like you failed. But, you said they're coming, and you're right. They're not ready yet, but they're coming back, which is a good thing. And the online coaching you do with people everywhere throughout the world, right?
Yes.
All right. So tell people how they can say, Sherry, I want you to be my coach.
I can be found easily on Instagram. So at Sherry Shaban Fitness is my handle. That's also my YouTube channel handle, where I have workouts for you. My podcast is there, so you have an idea of my style. And then if you've resonated with the conversation around unwanted eating behavior, I do have a free download workbook for you to work through and get started on your journey. And you can grab that at makepeacewithfood.com.
And that's the Make Peace with Food community. God, I didn't do it right again. Community eat. All right, I give up.
That's close. For the community, the website there is ourcommunity.com. But again, it's a very beautiful, special group, and really, really for those who are ready to let go of the behavior and ready to really step into the love of themselves.
How long did it take you to come up with that community?
It was just a download. It was just a download in my morning meditation. All of the things I do are just downloads. When I just connect to a higher power, I actually don't believe it's my idea. I just believe it's actually given to me. I just open up my antenna and it's just shared with me.
I love it. I always love the play on words. Always loved it. I want to talk about something else very important, because it's awesome. And you've actually had some guests on that I've had on my podcast. Nice. Fall in Love with Fitness. How did that come about?
Fall in Love with Fitness really describes the last 25 years of the journey of really just learning to fall in love with yourself ultimately. And that's what it's about. And I just see a lot of people have a resistance to fitness because fitness for them is a form of punishment for not being okay with who they are, for not being accepting of who they are. And normally we're told to diet and exercise when there's a defect that we're supposed to change. And so the conversation on that podcast is really to help people fall in love with the journey, stay present, and hear so many different conversations around people who've overcome major adversities and specialists from different areas of the world talking about things that are not so conventional. And it's really stepping away from diet. It's really stepping away from calories in, calories out balance, and really understanding the mind, body, and spirit connection that must be in balance for you to really create lasting change.